Hey guys, it's Christian, and today we'll take a look at the two self-hosted app deployment platforms, Coolify and Dokploy. Many of you really liked my recent Coolify video, but wanted to see a direct comparison against Dokploy, because some of you thought that might be the better solution. They both let you deploy containerized applications and services on your own hardware, but without you having to manually set up the infrastructure or manage the deployment processes. So on paper, they seem to do the exact same thing. But as always, the devil is in the details. There are a few important differences where I personally think Dokploy is better than Coolify, but also some others where Coolify might be better than Dokploy. Depending on what matters most to you, one of them might be a much better fit for your setup. So in this video, we'll take a look behind the curtain and compare them side by side. Quick note, it is not a full tutorial, so here I'm mostly just talking about the features and I will tell you my personal opinion where the one or another solution is better. If you're looking for a step-by-step guide, again, I've already done one for Coolify. I'll leave you a link in the description. But if you want a dedicated Dokploy tutorial as well, then just leave a comment, and of course, I can make one for you. Let's quickly cover what they both have in common, because there is obviously a need for a platform like this that gives you the convenience of a Heroku or Vercel style workflow, where you just push your applications to a Git repository, and the platform then is magically turning this into a live service deployment. Both tools contain a reverse proxy that's handling the incoming traffic, managing TLS certificates, and they also can automatically update the application when the code is changing. They basically manage the infrastructure under the hood entirely for you. But on your own hardware, that's probably the biggest difference between tools like Dokploy and Coolify and cloud service platforms like Heroku or Vercel. Here, it's all happening on your local infrastructure. So either your home lab, virtual servers, or if you have a favorite hosting provider, of course, you can install Dokploy or Coolify on these servers as well. The installation is also super simple. Both tools have a simple one-liner command that you just copy and then paste in the terminal of your virtual servers, and then just start doing the installation completely for you. They ask you the one or another question after the setup procedure where you create your admin accounts. They are both very simple and easy to set up and also very intuitive to get started. Now, after the setup procedure, you can log into a nice and clean web interface on Dokploy or on the Coolify's platform, and then you can start managing your servers and start configuring it. And here is where they start to diverge a little. But before we start talking about the differences and the exact features of Dokploy and Coolify, I quickly want to talk about another incredible tool called Monday.com. Some of you might already know it, but they just launched some game-changing AI features that take it to the next level. For example, what caught my attention is their AI assistant called Sidekick. This thing can create boards, write documentation, research online, and so much more to help you not only manage your tasks and projects, but also run your entire operations and workflow to save you valuable time and expand what your teams can deliver. Also, the new Vibe apps are amazing. There you just describe what you need in plain English, like a bug tracker, incident response workflows, or a software release planner, and it builds the entire custom application in seconds, including columns, views, automations, everything. It is really incredible. And the AI workflows orchestrate entire processes end to end, where you can create repeatable automations that happen on specific events, like analyzing the severity of incoming tickets and routing this to the right team, or summarizing meeting notes and other tasks. The possibilities are really endless. So if you're interested in trying out Monday.com for free and you want to check it out, of course, you can do that with the link in the description box down below. Alright, so now let's come back to Dokploy and Coolify. So here I'm logged into my Dokploy's and Coolify's testing instance in my home lab. Currently, I'm not running any of them in a production setup. I will later tell you why I'm not doing this, but I've been running these two platforms side by side for a few weeks and trying out different things like connecting different Git providers, trying out different build types, deploying Docker Compose stacks, deploying some Node.js applications, making some updates on the Git repo and seeing how that translates into a live environment. And I personally think that although Coolify is a nice platform, in some ways Dokploy is much better. First and foremost, Dokploy is a Swarm-first platform. That's probably the strongest argument against Coolify, even though that Coolify has some experimental flags for Swarm. If you go to servers management and go to Swarm experimental, you can make this node a Swarm manager or Swarm worker. There's also a documentation that this is an experimental feature. But again, you can see already that Coolify was not built with Docker Swarm in mind. The installation instructions recommend you that you set up at least one dedicated management server of Coolify and then add at least one deployment server that has a little more resources where you deploy your applications. And of course, you can add more than one server to the Coolify's platform. But still, these servers are operating individually. You have to manage the reverse proxy and all the settings on each of them. In Dokploy, this is completely different. Once you go through the installation script of Dokploy, it will automatically enable the Swarm mode and create a new cluster on the server you install. And then once you enabled a container registry, you can add more than one worker or manager node to this Swarm cluster. It supports the two primary ways to scale your servers: vertical scaling by adding more CPU or memory into the machines, or horizontal scaling by adding multiple servers. Sorry for the light background, I didn't make this presentation, by the way. And it also has a multi-node routing model with the traffic reverse proxy under the hood and a load balancer that automatically forwards or redirects the incoming traffic to the actual service applications on your workers. So that is not existing, or at least not existing in that same way on the Coolify's platform. And this is, in my opinion, such a big plus for the Dokploy's platform, because if you're using a platform like this, you probably expect it to have some kind of horizontal scaling method where you can add more than one replica for your application deployments. Also, I think that Dokploy has a much better and simpler user interface and user experience. I know this is very subjective, but that's just my honest and humble opinion. I think that the Dokploy's user interface looks a lot more professional and find settings for. Of course, Coolify also has a nice web interface and it has dark mode, and it of course isn't terrible, but I think there are a lot of different nested menus that are somehow laid out a little weird. And there are these annoying sponsorship pop-ups in the Coolify's dashboard. I know that free and open source projects like this, they kind of need a little support and monetization. But yeah, why not just leave a simple link in the dashboard or on your Git repository? You don't actually need an annoying pop-up that always asks the user to donate money. Dokploy doesn't have anything like this. Again, it looks a lot more cleaner and a lot more professional, and is, in my opinion, the better user experience or the better user interface. Also, Dokploy has many more Git providers and options than Coolify. So here you can add GitHub, GitLab, both self-hosted and cloud, by the way. You can add Bitbucket, Git, Docker, generic Git, or upload any deployment files. Coolify, you can add a public repository, so a generic Git repo. You can also add a private repo with GitHub apps, or a private repository with deploy keys. So that might work on the one or another Git platform. For example, in GitLab, the self-hosted version, I've tried it with deploy keys. But honestly, I think if you don't want to use deploy keys that give the application instantly access to the entire Git platform, you want to use a different way to connect private repositories with some form of API token or SSH authentication. This is not easily possible here in Coolify, at least as far as I know. So you can add public repositories or private repos with deploy keys. But here in Dokploy, for example, you can add a generic Git repository and add an SSH key authentication to it. And of course, it supports Bitbucket and Git that is not even possible in Coolify. So in my opinion, this is much better. And also other integrations like build type support. So here, for example, you can add Docker files, you can add Rail packs, Nix packs, Heroku build packs, or static applications like SPA single page applications. On Coolify, you also have different deploy types. For example, if you go to public repository, okay, so yeah, we need to add some repo. Again, this is kind of the stuff that I personally don't like so much with that user interface. But yeah, here you can see you have Nix pack, static, Dockerfile, and Docker Compose, but you don't have all the options that Dokploy supports. And honestly, for me, it is not so terrible. But if for whatever reason you're coming from a competitive platform like Heroku or Vercel and you're using Heroku build packs, that would not be possible in Coolify, but in Dokploy. So another argument why you would want to use that platform instead of the other. Also, what Coolify does not have at all is an integrated monitoring section. Here in Dokploy, you can see the CPU usage, the memory usage, the disk space across the cluster, of course, the disk and network I/O. In my opinion, it isn't the strongest argument for this platform, so that's why I put that in the list down below. But who knows? I mean, if you're using a platform like Coolify or Dokploy, you probably don't want to manage infrastructure at all, so maybe you're not willing to manage a Prometheus Grafana instance, and then you embrace some kind of monitoring features to have a quick overview. Yeah, that could be an argument. But yeah, these are obviously, in my opinion, the strongest arguments for using Dokploy. Also, there is an AI feature that I personally have not tested because I don't know, why should I use an AI feature on a platform like this? But yeah, again, also not existing in Coolify. So yeah, another argument might be interesting for one or another person. Some other features like the S3 destinations are very similar. So here you can see there are many providers supported on the Dokploy's platform. On the Coolify's platform, these providers are known to work. Others might work, but have not been tested. So again, here you can also see that Dokploy has been tested against more integrations or more providers as well for the S3 storage. Overall, I think Dokploy sounds like the better solution, at least to me. Looks more professional, has better user interface, and more integrations, more providers supported. But there are still a few things that Coolify still does better than Dokploy, and of course, I want to mention them. First of all, Coolify has many pre-configured or predefined settings and management utilities. One of them might be Cloudflare Tunnel. You cannot see this on the localhost server, but if you add another deploy server to the Coolify's platform, you would have a separate menu with Cloudflare tunnels where you just add your credentials, and then Coolify is managing the Cloudflare daemon that automatically connects to the Cloudflare servers and initiates a secure tunnel to your local server where you could publish applications to the public internet in a secure and simple way. Dokploy also has some integration guide that explain what Cloudflare tunnels is and how to integrate and use Cloudflare tunnels in Dokploy's environment. It is another guide that you have to run through. In Coolify, this is much better integrated and much simpler to use. Also, what is much better in Coolify than in Dokploy is that it supports multiple reverse proxies. So here, for example, in the proxy settings, you can switch your proxy from the default traffic reverse proxy to Caddy, for example, if you prefer that. Or you could also completely disable the proxy integration. So then you could use your own traffic instance and use whatever is installed on the remote server. Honestly, this is super annoying in the Dokploy's platform because Dokploy uses traffic under the hood, and you can also configure it by unlocking the files and jumping in and configure stuff. But it only supports traffic, and only in a very specific way. So I tried to modify the traffic compose files and the traffic configurations in Dokploy, and it was a real pain in the ass. So I would recommend, if you're using Dokploy and that already comes with a pre-configured and pre-installed version of the traffic reverse proxy, just use it as it is and don't try to modify too much. Maybe add your own middleware configurations and maybe the one or another setting here and there, but don't try to replace the traffic reverse proxy with something else. This is not working great. Instead, in Coolify, that is also not the easiest way to do, but you could do that. So disable the traffic reverse proxy and then do your own stuff, and Coolify will still attach the traffic labels to your Docker deployments, so your custom traffic reverse proxy would pick them up. So it is, in my opinion, much easier to manage your own custom reverse proxies or use different reverse proxies in Coolify than it is in Dokploy. So there it probably isn't even possible. Also, what Coolify does a little better, if you go to projects and add a resource, it supports more database types than Dokploy. Honestly, it is not such a strong argument because there are just 3 others like KeyDB, Dragonfly, and ClickHouse. This is not possible in Dokploy. So there you can go to projects and create a database service and choose from Postgres, MongoDB, MariaDB, MySQL. Honestly, I think these 5 database types are more than enough. So if you want to deploy another database type, well, it's super simple on Dokploy. You just create a service called Docker Compose, deploying the database, and that's it. But yeah, again, if you are using these type of platforms, you're probably one of the users that don't want to set up databases on their own. So there might be one or another use case where you think, oh, I'm really into ClickHouse databases or KeyDB. That's probably better in Coolify. Also, what Coolify does a little better than Dokploy is that it has more guardrails and housekeeping maintenance features. What do I mean by this? Well, you find things in here like a Docker cleanup scheduler, for example. So that automatically deletes unused volumes, unused networks. It just runs a Docker purge command somewhere on a server. But that is really important because otherwise the Docker images take too much space on your disk, and at some point the server is getting full. Coolify does many of these management tasks like disk usage check or notify you when the disk usage is more than 80%. In Dokploy, there's also something like this existing. For example, if you go to a project, you can run any scheduled task here. So add any cron job expression and then run a simple bash or shell script. There you could basically do the same thing. For example, run a database backup or do a Docker cleanup. So this is not such a strong argument for Coolify because these maintenance features are more for people that want to have a one-click solution. If you're familiar with server management, you know how to run bash scripts or how to work with cron jobs. There's actually no real reason to choose Coolify over Dokploy just because it has this Docker cleanup script. But it still might be interesting for the one or another person that Coolify is a little simpler and takes you a little more by the hand when it comes to these type of management features. Still, in my opinion, Dokploy is the much better system when you directly compare these two because first and foremost, it uses Swarm. It takes away a lot of the complexity of setting up a cluster, doing load balancing, setting up TLS, certificates, and it supports more integrations like Git providers and build types, and also has a cleaner and simpler user experience in design. So yeah, if I would have to pick one of these two solutions for my home lab, it probably would be Dokploy. However, Coolify seems to be like the more home labber's choice. Yeah, if you don't need Swarm, fine. You have many housekeeping scripts like the Docker cleanup, Cloudflare tunnel integrations, everything you can, of course, technically do in Dokploy as well with custom cron jobs or scripts. But Coolify makes it a little easier for the less technical person, I guess. And I don't mean this in an offensive or negative way. Less technical just means that you probably don't have to manage so much and you just don't have to care so much about the infrastructure, which is actually the main reason why you would want to use such a platform in the first place. Anyway, I still don't think that I personally will adopt either of them, neither Dokploy nor Coolify, and that for one simple reason. I don't like platforms that force you to use them only in the way they want it and abstract things by hiding it from you or making it less customizable. What do I mean by this? Well, just like I explained, they work pretty well if you install them on a fresh and new server, set up a new virtual machine, run the one-line script installation command, and you'll be fine. But if you like to integrate either Dokploy or Coolify into an existing environment, like try to run this on an existing Docker Swarm cluster where you already have an established traffic configuration and everything is running fine, and you just like to add Dokploy, trust me guys, it's just a pain in the ass. Don't try this. So if you want to use Dokploy or Coolify, just set up a new virtual machine. Don't try to install them in an existing environment that doesn't really work well. For me, it's just creating a lot more complexity because I already have my own build process pipelines. I can build applications and container images by using CI/CD. I'm using GitLab CI or GitHub Actions. Then I seriously don't need a platform that does it all for me, but adds a lot more complexity because it doesn't integrate with the rest of my workflows. So that's why I still would prefer just using GitLab CI or GitHub Actions. But again, still, I think Dokploy and Coolify are great systems, and there is obviously a need and a great use case for that. I'm probably just not the main target audience, but maybe you are. And hopefully this video helped you to decide whether you want to use Dokploy or Coolify and what is the better system for you. So I would love to hear your opinion about these two platforms, and if you'd like to see more tutorials like this, then please don't forget to give this one a like and subscribe to my channel. Again, I could make a dedicated Dokploy tutorial if you would want, or maybe you have another idea, then you can tell me in the comments. Thanks everybody for watching. A big thanks goes out to all of my supporters. You guys are really amazing. You make all these free tutorials possible. And of course, I'm gonna catch you in the next one. Take care. Bye bye.